Hi, welcome to SAP BODS session. In this session, we will try to understand what is an SAP BODS initially and what is the purpose of an SAP BODS, why actually you have to consider an SAP BODS, why can't other ETL tools that are there in the market, that can be an SAP BW, that can be in Informatica from non-SAP world, that can be data storage. So why not all these things, or why not an SAP BODS? Or so why we have to consider an SAP BODS. So all these different points that we will try to understand, and we will also see that what is the course content that will be covered, what are all the topics that will be covered as part of the data quality management from the SAP BODS, as part of a data integration from SAP BODS. So we will also try to understand the overview of an SAP BODS, like SAP BODS architecture, the physical architecture and the logical architecture, and also we will try to understand so what are all the connectivities, what are all the different the products or applications or databases, files the BODS can access. So all these different points that we will try to understand in this particular session. The agenda of this particular session would be to have a why SAP BODS, what are the course content, and what will be covered as part of this particular course. So in order to proceed further, so we will try to see the first introduction to the data services. When I say introduction to data services, so a lot of people will have a lot of technology background, like somebody comes from SAP background, that's something like an SAP ABAP background, the people comes from SAP BW background, the people comes from non-SAP background, something like that. The people especially, I will focus more on the people that who got a non-SAP background. So because of the features of an SAP BODS, the SAP BODS is very much purchased by the lot of non-SAP companies. So well, let us take an example that we are considering the Informatica. Informatica is one of the ETL tool where non-SAP companies will, most of the companies will use it actually. But what are the advantages we have over the Informatica in this particular SAP BODS? So when I say advantages of an SAP BODS, so we have, so there is a tight integration of SAP BODS with the SAP, and there is a tight integration between an SAP HANA with an SAP BODS, and an SAP HANA is, you know that it is a real-time data replication is possible into an SAP HANA, and SAP HANA is an in-memory database. So because of all these features, an SAP HANA as a back-end database for all your ERP systems is mandatory, but SAP ERP or non-SAP ERP also. So during this particular process, maybe a lot of consultants or developers in US and UK and other countries, they are migrating slowly from Informatica to SAP BODS, or maybe data stage to SAP BODS. So during this particular process, so the guys who already have an Informatica experience, yes, it is very easy for them to understand because the Informatica is an ETL tool, the BODS again is an ETL tool. That is a very important point you have to understand. And the second point here is, what are the features that makes BODS is very special when compared to other ETL tools. So BODS is a single enterprise ETL tool where it can perform a data quality management, where it can perform the data integration management. So it can do match, it can do deduplication, it can do an address cleanse, it can do a data cleanse, it can do zero coding. So all these features of an SAP BODS will allow the BODS is one of the very powerful ETL tool. And we already know that we have something called as a slowly changing dimension 2. The slowly changing dimension 2 is a very powerful data warehousing concept where we have to preserve the history along with the current, but you have to capture the time as well. What is the duration of the existence of the history? So all those things. So if you take an example of any particular non-SAP or any other than SAP BODS tool, any ETL tool that you are going to consider, in order to implement that slowly changing dimension 2, so you have to struggle a lot as a developer. But if you take an example of an SAP BODS, BODS has a inbuilt transformations. Simply map it, let's load it, it will automatically gives you a slowly changing dimension 2. So that sort of variety of options exists in SAP BODS when compared to other ETL tools. Even in this particular session, we will take up one a very important the concept of data warehousing system, that is a slowly changing dimension 2, and we will try to evaluate so how exactly we are going to do step-by-step process and all and everything. So these are all about the features of an SAP BODS for the consultants who wants to migrate from non-SAP or non-BODS background to BODS background, or from Informatica or data stage. Other ETL tools, if you want to migrate to SAP BODS, is very easy for them. That is a very one point. And the second point is, I mentioned that there is a tight integration between SAP and SAP BODS. So here there is a very important marketing strategy is involved here. So you all guys know that SAP and SAP BODS are two separate products from two different companies. In 2007, actually the SAP has acquired Business Objects. So from then the BODS becomes an SAP BODS. So whenever SAP has acquired the BODS or Business Objects, the company, the SAP is having almost like 40,000 customers across the globe where they already have an SAP products in their IT infrastructure, and the BO have only 10,000 customers across the globe where they have having the BO infrastructure at their end. So whenever those 40,000 customers, SAP a company has acquired this BO company. So what exactly SAP is trying to do? SAP don't have to look for another clients. So automatically the SAP can go to their existing 40,000 clients and they can market. Why can't you use a Business Objects? Why can't you use an SAP BODS? If you purchase an SAP BODS, so I can give you this much of discount. So I'm talking about another dimension of why exactly you will see a more market in the industry. So from features perspective, yes, it is very good when compared to other ETL tools. Even from SAP's marketing perspective also, it is very good because SAP doesn't have to look for a new clients to sell an SAP BODS. It is sufficient to go for its own client and offer them an SAP BODS tool. That is one of the very important potential point that needs to be considered whenever we are talking about a tight integration between an SAP and SAP BODS. That is very important. Whenever the consultants and SAP BW consultants, so we already know that the BW it can do a reporting, it can do an ETL, it can do a data storage and all and everything. But the very important point the SAP BW is lacking here is a flexibility. In SAP BW, unfortunately, we don't have a flexibility. That is the one point. And second point is we don't have a powerful transformations. And the third point is we don't have a powerful functions. So we know that if you want to write a substring, if you want to get a substring in a string value, so you have to write some routine in older versions of an SAP BW. So that size of headaches we don't have it. And even the SAP BODS can talk to any ERP system, any application and any RDBMS system, any file without any problem, and it can talk to anything easily. That is one of the edge we have with SAP BODS, and because all the industries are looking for where we have an SAP BW landscape, all the companies are now parallelly they are using an SAP BODS also, because an SAP BODS it will talk to an SAP BW also. It will extract the whatever the info cube tables you have, whatever the DSOs you have, and whatever the open hub tables you have, all those can be extracted from SAP BW from with the help of an SAP BODS. If you talk about loading into BW, yes, so BODS can load into data sources. Till data sources and PSA, the BODS will load it. Whenever I am talking about an SAP ECC system, yes, the BODS can load into an SAP ECC system using BAPIs and IDOCs. So whenever we are trying to extract the data from SAP ECC system, there is a business content that we already know that. There we have something called as an extractors, ODP API enabled extractors and non-ODP API enabled extractors we have in SAP ECC system. So those have that much of tight integration, and you don't have to install or plug in, or you don't have to install any adapters between SAP ECC and between SAP BW system if you want to communicate with an SAP BODS. So because of these understanding, so there is always a need for SAP BW consultants also need to learn an SAP BODS. That is the second point. And the third point is adapters, or the functional guys. The guys who are already well versed with an ABAP, so they can also learn an SAP BODS. It will enhance their career actually. There are some projects where the ABAPers needs help from BODS. BODS needs help from ABAPers. What I'm trying to tell you is, writing the huge lines of an ABAP code, now all the companies are realizing that the maintenance of the code are not on everything, so they want to get relief of it, and they want to have a scenario of removing the ABAP code, conversion of an ABAP code completely into the BODS code. There, if the ABAPers also have a BODS knowledge, it will very enhancement for their career perspective. So there are all the three different kind of people. They can plan their careers into this particular SAP BODS course. And there is a tight integration between the SAP HANA and an SAP BODS. So we already know that the SAP HANA is an in-memory database, where the in-memory database will allow us the huge processing of real-time data in the main memory, that is RAM. So whenever the SAP HANA, SAP's roadmap would be, so within 2-3 years they want to replace whatever the backend database for ECC they are using, maybe Oracle or maybe SQL Server, or DB2, they want to replace all these things with the help of an SAP HANA. So on the other hand, if you want to load the data into SAP HANA, because you have to do a lot of modeling and all, so you have to be in a position to explain, or you have to be in a position to load the data into an SAP HANA from non-SAP ERP systems. Maybe non-SAP companies, maybe they want to load into an SAP HANA because of the powerful reporting technologies, powerful reporting features that may expect. In that way, wherever you have an SAP HANA project is there in US or UK and some other countries, you can identify that there is always a need for the replication tools. When I say replication tools, we have different types of replication tools actually. An SLT in order to load it into the target system, BODS in order to load it to the target system. We have a Sybase replication server in order to load into the target system. So we have a lot more, but out of that, if you want to load it, the data into a target and SAP HANA, the BODS is also very the powerful and alternative tool where it will allow the companies to load the data into an SAP HANA with an SAP BODS within no time, and so wherever we have an SAP HANA projects in the companies, they will definitely recruit an SAP BODS consultant. So because of all these features, because of all these the points or edge over the other ETL tools, and so over the contemporary technologies like an SAP BW also, there is always need for the consultants who wants to have a career with an SAP HANA, who wants to have a career in ETL, so they can definitely go for this SAP BODS. So these are all the points why exactly you have to consider an SAP BODS. So having this particular knowledge, we will try to understand what is the data services actually. So data services is a technology, of course, you already know that, where it can perform an ETL. ETL means an extraction, transformation and loading. So when I say an extraction, it is going to extract the metadata from the source system. It will transform the data, like what you need to have. You need to have a group by, you need to have a transformations, or you need to manipulate the data, you need to have a conversions. So whatever the technologies you have, so whatever the business logic needs to be implemented, all these things will be handled with the help of a transform and move the data anywhere, any frequency. So that is what actually happens from data services perspective. So now, apart from that, the data services also will do improve of your data. So when I say improve of my data, it will handle the data quality management very well. When I say it will handle, it is going to parse the data, it is going to cleanse the data, it is going to enhance, match and consolidate the data. So these kind of different strategies will be applicable, and different strategies will be implemented as part of this business intelligence process. If you clearly understand this particular diagram, so you will see that there is a real-time data, there is a batch data that will be loaded into an SAP BODS here, and after that we are going to have a physical data integration. On top of that, we are going to have a semantic layer. The semantic layer would be universe from the SAP business objects, products and all and everything. And after that, you are going to create a reports out of it. This is an entirely the business intelligence process. So business intelligence process is the aim of any particular company, because ultimately they need a reports and dashboards for their analytics purpose. So ultimately the BODS has to perform all these extraction, transformation, loading, then physical data integration will happen. After that, the reporting will happen. That can be from the non-SAP tools and SAP tools. Having this particular knowledge, now as I mentioned previously, we have actually two parts of an SAP BODS actually. So one is called as an integration of an SAP BODS. So when I say integration, so the main part of an integration would be, so take the original raw data, so please extract and transform the data and load the data anywhere at any frequency. So please observe carefully here. So we have a different data sources like CRM, RDBMS system, mainframes, an Excel sheet, web, ERP, emails and files and etc. And we are going to load it into the target system like an SAP Business Intelligence, SAP BW, SAP ARC system, CRM, Data Mart and data warehousing system. So all these things that you are going to load it into the target system. That is one of the part of an SAP BODS. Now we will see one very good example here with the data quality management. With the data quality management, so we have something called as So Richard Tan Hock GAN, the Future Electronics. Second, Shenton Way, SGX Center. So that is the purchase order raised by one company called Future Electronics. In the second record, we have a Tan Hock GAN, Future Electron Co. And the third record would be something like Hock GAN 10. So these are the three records for the purchase order. The BODS will identify which two records are belonging to the same company. So in order to avoid the duplicacy here, so what exactly the BODS is going to do? So BODS is going to take the original raw data, it is going to standardize and correct the data, and it is going to match and deduplicate the data. So that is what actually happens with the data quality management. With the help of this data quality management, we are talking about an original raw data. We are going to standardize and correct the data. We are going to match and deduplicate the data with the help of a data quality management. So finally, instead of three records, we are arriving to the two records. So that is what actually happens with this data quality management. So having this particular knowledge regarding the SAP BODS, now so we will try to understand a bit more on the SAP data services technical architecture and all. But so having this particular knowledge, so we will try to verify what exactly the course content. This is a course content. The audience of this course would be the guys who are responsible for implementing, the guys who are responsible for administrating and managing the data integration projects. It will help those guys if they want to convert from other ETL tools to business objects data services. Maybe the guys who wants to learn an SAP BODS because in their project maybe their company is trying to implement an SAP HANA. Maybe they are trying to extract data from SAP ECC or BW system using an SAP BODS system. So all these individuals and professionals can be able to learn this particular SAP BODS 4.1 course. The prerequisites of this particular course would be, so you need to aware of what is the data warehousing system, what is the process of data warehousing system. So what are the different schemas we have, like star schema, snowflake schema and all and everything. What are the concepts like slowly changing dimension, types and all and everything. So you have to understand those points. So experience with the SQL language. So we need to learn the basic SQL language out of it. If you don't know the SQL language, also don't worry, because the BODS doesn't expect any coding. It is a completely geographic interface. You have to understand, or you have to practice well on the BODS functions. It is sufficient if you know how to play around with the BODS functions. And what is an architecture, what is a top-down approach of a data warehousing architecture and all and everything. If you know all these things, it is better for your career. But as a BODS tool, learning the tool alone, it doesn't require any knowledge of SQL, any knowledge of data warehousing, something like that. But if you learn it, it will enhance your career. So as part of a course, we will try to see the BODS overview. When I say BODS overview, we will see that what are the BODS benefits, what are the associated products, what are the interfaces we have, data services architecture on single and distributed environment. So that is what actually we are going to understand in the very first session of an BODS overview. And as part of a BODS designer, so we will slowly starting into what is a BODS designer. So BODS designer would be our tool. As a BODS developer, we have to concentrate most of our timings on SAP BODS developer. So where we are going to understand how to create a local repository, what are the main options we have in the designer. So what is a hierarchy within an SAP BODS, like so create a project, create a job, data flow, workflow, etc. And how to connect different source systems and application or type of sources, RDBMS, and if you already have something called as files, how to connect with them, and so what is the data store configurations and system configurations. So defining file formats for flat and XML and XML file, Excel and XML files. So how to connect, make a connectivity to the flat files and Excel sheets and XML pipeline, XML files and all, etc. After that, we will try to start with the introduction of how to create a badge job. So how to create a badge job within an SAP BODS, how to work with the objects within an SAP BODS job. So when I say objects, so we have two types of objects mainly: the single-use object and the reusable object. So we have a jobs, workflow, data flow. These are all comes under the different categories of an objects. So how to use a query transformation within a data flow. We will see a very basic usage of a query transformation out of it. And so we will see that how to load into the target system, how to execute the job. So that is what actually we are going to understand from BODS Designer perspective and the badge jobs the perspective. And after that, we will slowly moving into the different types of transformations we have. When I say different types of transformations, so we have something called the data integrated type of transformations, where with the help of a transformations you are going to manipulate your data. So you are going to manipulate the data in such a way that it will suit to your reporting requirements. So we have different types of transformations we have actually. So we have something called a data integrated type of transformations. We have a data platform transformations. We have a data quality transformations and all and everything. So we have a data date generation transform, the pivot transform, reverse pivot transform, XML pipeline transform, query transformation from data platform transformations category. Normally these data integrator transformations are bit useful in performing more the scenarios of implementing the slowly changing dimensions, implementing different types of slowly changing dimensions. It is more responsible to have to convert the rows into columns and columns into rows. So if you want to unnest and nest the data, so all the different kind of bit more typical kind of scenarios, normally we will go for the data integrated type of transformations. So the next one would be the defining the data platform transformations. The data platform transformations includes the query transformation, case, merge, validation, row generation and SQL transformation. So the query transformation is very basic transformation. Without query transformation, we cannot imagine a single job within an SAP BODS. So how to route the records with case transformation, how to perform a union with merge transformation, how to identify the validness and invalidness of the records with the validation transformation. So how to generate numbers, integer numbers with the row generation. So how to push down with SQL transformation. So all these different kind of strategies that will be applied as part of a data platform transformations. So having this particular knowledge, we will extend our knowledge to the one of the data quality standards, that is called as how to perform an address cleanse, how to perform a zero coding. So all these things that will be seen as part of this particular requirement of data quality transformation. And now we will come to the very important concept of our data warehousing, that is a slowly changing dimension one. So we know that the slowly changing dimensions are used to preserve the history along with the current, along with the time capture even. So we are going to implement the slowly changing dimension 0, slowly changing dimension 1, the slowly changing dimension 2. And in order to implement these the data warehousing concepts, we have to make use of an existing transformations of an SAP BODS. For SCD type 0, we need to have a query transformation. For SCD type 1, we need to have a table comparison transformation and map operation transformation. SCD type 2, we need to have a table comparison transformation and history preserving and key generation transformation. And using functions, we have the scripts and variables. So that is a different topic where it is used most of the time to control the BODS job. So to use an existing functions to use the built-in functions. We have different types of built-in functions in SAP BODS actually. When I say like built-in functions, so we have something called a database functions, string functions, date functions, conversion functions, miscellaneous functions, environment functions. So all these things we have in a topic called functions and scripts and variables. We will also see we have a different types of variables like so global variables, local variables, and we can also create a custom variables if whatever the built-in functions we have in SAP BODS, if those built-in functions are not fulfilling your requirements, so you can always go for the creation of a custom variables using custom functions using variables and parameters. And in order to make the BODS very, very powerful, so we have a data services scripting language. The scripting language will allow the BODS to perform an advanced kind of the transformation. It can perform a delta mechanism if you want to perform a source based delta, target based delta. For all these scenarios, you can make use of this particular the data services scripting language. So apart from all these things, we will also understand the basic data profiling. Basic data profiling means before starting off your ETL project, you can analyze what is the data is all about, or whether we have any null values, whether we have any matching records between the two tables, whether we don't have, what are the percentage of null percentages, what is the percentage of blanks. So all the data insight regarding your source data can be achieved from the data assessment, that is called the data profiling actually, and how to use the data profiling in conjunction with validation transformation. So that we will see that as part of a data assessment course. And after that, it's a very important like error handling. So error handling means, let us take an example that so how to load the data whenever we are trying to load the data into 5 tables. So we have initially completed load into 2 tables, and whenever we are trying to load into the 3rd table, so unfortunately the BODS job got a failure because of various reasons. In the next time, whenever we are going to rerun the BODS job, it should not start from the first data flow again, or it should not start load the first table again. It has to directly go to the 3rd table. So that is what actually should happen as part of this error handling technique. So after that, we need to have a setting up an exception handling. So there are like a lot of users requirements saying that so what exactly happens if the BODS got a failure because of the connection issues, because of format issues, because of maybe file connectivity issues, maybe SAP BW run issues, SAP ECC run issues, maybe RDBMS access issues and all and everything. So in case of all these exceptions, the BODS has a concept called try-catch technique. With the try-catch technique, you can automatically connect. With the try-catch technique, you can automatically detect all those exceptions, and you can send an email to the business people where they can view the notification or the mail to their Outlook. In case of a success, in case of a failure, we can send a mail to the people and they can go through so what exactly the status of the job. That is all about an exception handling. So if we go to the if conditional, it's a very, very important if conditional clause. If especially the if conditional clause is used if you want to design your flow for full load versus delta load, and if you want to handle huge number of files in a source system, if you want to identify the existence of the file in the source system. In all these scenarios, normally you will go for this if conditional class. We will see with one real-time scenario. And whenever we are talking about a while loop implementation, this is also very important if you want to perform a real-time data replication. So we can place the job within the while loop, and so in order to, if even though you have 100 files in the source system, If you want to process only one file at a time, in that case also we can use this while loop implementation. And next we will see the how exactly we can capture the change within the data. So maybe that can be source based CDC and target based CDC. With an example we will see that. So having this particular knowledge, we will see that the very important and interesting for all the people is an SAP integration and with an SAP BODS. So the SAP integration means in this particular session, so how to extract the data from SAP ECC system of different objects, like how to extract from SAP extractors, how to extract from application tables, how to extract from hierarchies, how to extract from the BAPI functions. So all these things that we will see as part of a data in SAP integration, and how to load it into a SQL server. So how to connect to an SAP ECC system, how to load into SAP ECC system, how to connect with an SAP BW, how to extract and open up tables, how to extract in hierarchies, how to extract the InfoCube tables. So how to extract the DSOs tables and all and everything that we will try to understand in SAP integration, the part of this course. And we will also understand what are the different methodologies of defining the NAVAB data flows, what is the difference between the NAVAB data flows and the normal data flows. So what are the scenarios in which we have to go for the NAVAB data flows, what are the scenarios in which we can go for the normal data flows. We will see everything as part of a SAP integration with an SAP BODS. So after that, we will try to understand the very important and current hot topic in the market is an SAP HANA and an SAP BODS integration. We will see a very minimal integration or minimal introduction of an SAP HANA and SAP HANA Studio introduction, the creation of a data store, I mean to say creation of a data store for SAP HANA and SAP BODS, to perform the load into an SAP HANA, to store the data in a column store. As you know that in SAP HANA we have two types of stores, column store and the row store. That is the speciality of the SAP HANA. And preview the data in SQL console on SAP HANA Studio. So this is a briefly all about the SAP BODS course content. Now as an introduction, like I will try to show you the implementation of a slowly changing dimension 2 with the help of the BODS as an introduction. Just have a feel of it, but don't confuse yourself. So because we are directly jumping onto the tool and we are trying to use the slowly changing dimension 2, so just try to identify what exactly the target records after execution, how exactly the target records are changing, how exactly BODS is able to preserve the history along with the current and along with the timestamp. So all these things that you will be able to understand with this particular real-time scenario. Dimension is a most important data warehousing concept, and this is one of the reasons because of the slowly changing dimension, actually the data warehousing solutions or data warehousing the solutions will be implemented in the industry. So the slowly changing dimension 2 will have a feature of preserving history and plus also preserve the current and also with respect to the change data capture. And we already discussed changing dimension. So whatever we are discussing in these sessions will comes under the target based CDC. So that's the reason why. So slowly changing dimension 2, so it will preserve the history, it will also have a current, plus it is also have the change data capture feature that doesn't exist in slowly changing dimension type 1 and type 0. A scenario how it will goes out and what we are going to discuss in our session. So we have a source records like this: employee ID, employee name, employee salary and employee address. And whenever we are trying to load for very first time, so all these records will be loaded into the target system. How they are going to load it into the target system? This is how actually they are going to load in the target system. But apart from that,
apart from that, so some more fields also going to be added. So the DBA will provide this particular table structure in the target system. So what is the fields we have here? Valid underscore from, valid underscore to, flag and SID. So these four columns needs to be created as part of a target or as part of a change data capture. So valid from, valid to, flag and SID. So these are all the four extra fields that needs to be created in the target table whenever we are trying to perform a first load into the target system. So that's the reason why let us take an example that we are trying to do a first load. So if you are trying to do a first load, since the date is here something like an 18, something like the date is on 18th of August. Let us take an example that so we have loaded, and this is the validity, because on that particular day the validity of that particular record will start. That's the reason why the valid from would be 18/8/2010 and the valid to. So because whenever there is a change, so until then the record seems to be, our record will call as an active record. So let us take an example that if the customer is changed his address from US to UK, so the time the change of the record or the time the period, or let us take an example that today I have loaded the data, maybe after 2 days maybe he changed address from US to UK. So these 2 days the record will called as an active record. So whenever I say an active record, so I don't have any valid end of that active record. So today this is an active record, but I don't know whenever they are going to be inactive record, or whenever they are going to, our customer is going to change his address or her address. So that's the reason why I know the valid from, but I don't know the valid today. So that's the reason why I am going to take up a valid to would be a default date, something like 22/10, or you can also say that something like a 30. You can also say that something like 10/9/9999. So that is how actually the things will go on. And this is a flag would be 1, and SID is the surrogate key. So we will see that how exactly the surrogate key will get created within SAP BODS. So now it's a very first one, and similarly I am going to change this also, and this is also 1, and this is 2 actually. This is how it happens in the first load. So now we will discuss regarding the second load. In the second load, the employee ID 1111, he's changed his address maybe after 1 or 2 years, maybe after 1 year, maybe after 2 days. Let us take an example that after 1 year. So after 1 year he has changed the address. Let us take an example. So in that case he becomes India, and it becomes it becomes US only, but one more new record will get added here like this with India, and the valid from and valid to. And since after 1 year the customer has changed the address from US to UK, whenever he changed from US to UK, that time or that period or that particular time instance, this particular record will become a deactivated record or passive record. So let's take an example that he changed after 1 year. So 18 or 19/9/2011. So on that particular day he has changed from US to India. So the flag would be something called as reset flag, right? So this flag would be 0, something like this. The end of this particular record will become the start of this particular record. So in that case, so we can have copy this, and this will become the valid to of the record of the US record will become the valid from in the India record, something like this. And as of now, he changed 1999-2011, but we are not sure what is the active period of it. So that's the reason why the value 2 will become a default value, something like this. And this will become again 1, and this will become 3. So we can filter what is the current location of the employee. If you filter on 0, you will get all the passive records of the customers. Or else if you filter on the default date like 9999, you will get all the current. So this is how actually the things will go on. But only the prerequisite that we have to maintain, or the prerequisite that we have to ask the DBA would be, so they have to maintain the structure. What is the structure? The valid from, valid to, flag and SID. So this structure has to be maintained in the target system before we perform a first load even, so that the flag, valid from, valid to, SID, so all these things will get take care of your the change data capture along with the times and all and everything. But in order to implement so all these different the strategies and all and everything, so we need to have some set of transformations have to be used within the SAP BODS. The transformations would be the table comparison, history transformation, key transformation and query transformation. So these transformations have to be used in order to implement the slowly changing dimension 2. So here also we are going to make use of a normal insert, update, delete. So these are all the normal operation codes we have to make use of. So here the table comparison, as usual, it is going to compare the source with the target. It is going to raise something called as an insert and update, and as usual, it will use to generate an operation codes, and history preserving is similar to our map operation. The history preserving is equal to two map operations actually. The history preserving will do an insert as an insert, it will do update as an insert. So these two things will be taken care individually by the history preserving. And the valid from and valid to and the flag, these three fields even populated from the history preserving transformation, whereas the SID is populated from the key generation transformation. So this is how actually, so the concept of the data warehousing will be implemented within the SAP BODS transformations like table comparison, history preserving, key generation and the query transformation. So this is how actually all the things will go on with the BODS functionality. Now we will jump on to the SAP BODS server and we will try to understand so what and how exactly the flow will look like. So this is what we have actually. This is the source, the table. This is the source table here actually, source file we have, and this is the target. This is the flow will look like. So we have a source, we have a query transformation, and we have a table comparison, history preserving, we have a key generation transformation, and we have a target, a company data underscore SCD. So this is what the target table. So whenever you are trying to implement an SCD, so you will request or DBA will create a table and he will give you the table, so that you have to import the table and you have to make it as a target. So that preliminary step has to be taken before implementing the slowly changing dimension 2. So all the records, all the column names are same, those are coming from the source, but apart from that we have created 4 columns like valid from, valid to, SID and the current flag. So I will try to explain you so what exactly we have did here. So we have a source. This is the source here we have. This is a company ID. So we have a city and we have a company name and we have a contact name and the relationship. And these are all the sample records. So here, so we will try to understand the business. So how exactly this particular customers and what exactly the sample record that we have taken, how these are all doing the business actually here. So now if we go to the business outline here, so I will try to take up the standard. Yes, so this is the table we are talking about. So we have a company ID, we have a city, the company name, the contact name and the relationship. So when I say company name, so the company will have some unique identification, and when I say city, the city where actually the company is located, and we have a company name, contact name and the relationship. So when I say company ID, so city, company name, contact name and the relationship and all and everything, now so we will try to understand how exactly the things will happen, so as part of a business. So here, since we are discussing in the sales and the distribution, so how exactly the distribution of the sales will happen from supplier or to a shipper or from a deliverable, from order to product ID, something like. So they are all order management and the ship management and the ship supply and all and everything. So there are some companies where sometimes they will become a shipper, and in turn if they have any particular vendors below them, then the same supplier will become a customer to the vendors or something like that. So in that case, so we want to understand, so what are all the companies actually they are like frequently changing or frequently working as a supplier sometimes or customer sometimes. So I want to understand who are the customers who are working most regularly as a suppliers and even also a customers. So that's the reason why, and also I want to understand the duration of average duration of any particular company where they are working as a supplier, and also the average duration of any particular company they are working as a customer. So all these things I would like to understand with the help of a slowly changing dimension with by enabling a feature to change data capture. So in order to understand, so I asked my DBA to please create a target structure, something like valid from, valid to, SID and flag. All these things I asked my DBA to create in the target table. So once my DBA will create the target table, then so I am ready to perform my first load. So that is the very interesting point that you have to identify. So now we will proceed with the implementation of the slowly changing dimension 2. So now, so I will take up a job as usual. So what I am going to do, but before that I would like to walk you through so what exactly we did. So we did a source, we have taken a source actually. After that I have implemented a query transformation. So in the query transformation, so I have added one field called valid from. So I will tell you why I have added, because in my source records I don't have any date field actually to identify the valid from, to identify the timestamp or to identify the what is the load time of it. So that's the reason why, in order to understand or in order to explain the load time, so I have created one field called valid from. For that particular valid from, I have a map with the system date. So that is what actually I did. So now, so after we did a sys date for the valid from column, so now what I can do, I can have a table comparison now. So in the table comparison I can compare with the primary key, and I can if you want to compare the contact name, you can always compare the contact name, and if you want to change, you can also change it. If you want to perform a history preserving as a contact name. Yes, you can change the contact name. And the key generation, and the key generation is used to perform or to increment an artificial keys. So key generation is used to generate a surrogate key, so that in that way we can achieve the creation of the surrogate key. So in this way, so what we have did, so we have created a query transformation. We have used the query transformation, so in order to populate a sysdate as a valid from, because I don't have any timestamp or I don't have any record identifier where it can identify the load time. So that's the reason why I'm using a query transformation. I'm using a table comparison. The table comparison would be to compare the primary keys, and also in order to capture what is the change in an existing system. So in an existing maybe contact name, or maybe the company name, or maybe the relationship of the companies, or whatever it is. So that's the reason why we are going to use the table comparison. The table comparison will raise a flags, or update flag, or an insert flag, or something like that. And the history preserving, so now the very important point of history preserving would be the history preserving will populate the date columns actually here. So valid from and valid to. If some records are changed, then the valid from will be populated by the history preserving transformation, and valid to will be populated as a new record. So this is a new record. This is the default the date that I am referring to earlier. So the end date of one would be the start date of another record. So that is what actually happens. So if you want to make use of the same day, or else if you want to make use of a day after or day before, valid from day of new record. So this is how actually the things can be happening. So use valid from date of new record, or else if you want to one day after the change, if you want to make it as a new record, it is all depends of how exactly we want to make things happen. So once the history preserving is implemented, the history preserving is transformation is equal to two map operations. That is what actually we have discussed. The history preserving is equal to two map operations. So here the map operation will insert a new valid to field values, and it will also change the valid from field to the current date, or to the change date, or whatever it is. So that's the reason why the history preserving transformation can be replaced with the two map operations. You don't have to it is not a fast and fast rule that, so we have to use the history preserving transformation in order to implement the slowly changing dimension too. So this method, it can be implemented with two map operations by removing the history preserving. So because we have to see all the transformations within the SAP BODS, so that's the only reason we are considering the FF_SCD query, table comparison, history preserving, key generation, and the company data_SCD. So this is what actually happens with FF_SCD. So this is how actually we are going to implement with all these transformations that require slowly changing dimension too. Now what I am going to do, I am going to take out a new job here, a new job that will talks about the naming convention itself should talk about the slowly changing dimension too. Say B_SED, the type SED type _2. So this is how actually the naming convention should be followed. So once this is done, so obviously I'm going for the data flow. So df_SED_SED type _2. That is the naming convention that I am trying to give here. So yes, so once this is completed, so we are going to create a file format. So obviously the standard, the step. So what exactly we have to perform here, the Excel workbook. And so in the Excel workbook, FF underscore the slowly changing dimension to, so version V1 actually. So I have created a lot of versions on this particular system. That's the reason why I'm just mentioning the version. So FF underscore SCD2 underscore V1. So I have used my desktop actually as a source, and after that I'm using SCD sample data and the worksheet, and use all the fields and use the first the column values or the column names. So I'm going to use an integer value, and I'm going to just click on OK. So as usual. So now, so we are going to simply drag and drop the same the source file. That's it. So this is the extraction of the source system. So after that, I am going to introduce a query transformation here. I'm going to drag and drop the query transformation from the tool palette. Double click on the query transformation, then to simply drag and drop all the columns what we have from source to the target. Simply drag and drop like this. Then, so what we can do? So we can perform what you call as creation of new columns. So right click, as I mentioned previously, I have to populate the valid from on the valid to. So that's the reason why. So we have a valid from. So valid from would be date and time, and that would be sys date. So sys date, I have populated valid from with the sys date. So now, so once this activity is completed, so I am going to proceed with the table comparison. Now the table comparison, that I am going to take the table comparison from data integrator type of transformations. This is a table comparison. Simply drag and drop the table comparison here and just try to connect the query transformation with the table comparison. So as we know that the table comparison is going to the compared source with the target, and depends upon the primary key it is going to populate, depends upon the primary keys and depends upon the compare columns. It is going to populate the different records actually. So I mean to say like the change records. So if you want to perform an update, so it is going to rise an update, or it is going to rise an insert, normal as an it can be an insert, whatever it is. So all the things of populating the flags will be raised by the table comparison. But if you want to manipulate, if you want to convert the flags, you are going to use the map operation. So that is the basic, the difference between the table comparison and the map operation. Map operation is going to manipulate the operation codes, but the table comparison is going to generate the operation codes. So that is what actually happens. So as I mentioned, so previously, so customer or my DBA has already created actually. So the required, so the required the column name, the table name in the target system, that is the company data underscore SCD. So that is what actually I have created. And here, because unlike in our previous examples of simply the slowly changing dimension one, so here we are going to create a generated key column. That column is called as an SID. So that's what actually we have to select and generate a key column, because depends upon the SID. So we are going to identify whether it is a new record or whether it is a inserted record or something like that. So that's the reason why. So we have to make use of a generated key column as an SID field in this particular the table comparison. So now once this is completed, so we have input primary key columns. That input primary column would be the company name. So that is the input primary key, and what exactly you want to compare. Whether you want to compare the relationship whether you want to identify the relationship means as a customer or as a supplier or as a shipper, whatever it is. So if you want to identify the relationship of it, then you can simply place the relationship field in the compare columns. So that is what actually happens here. So with this particular thing, so what we can do is the SID field in the target system will become our generated key column, and this is a surrogate key that will be raised by the key generation transformation in order to make sure the uniqueness of the record, and also it will make sure to identify so what is the latest record and what is your slowly changing dimension 3 also. So slowly changing dimension 2 and slowly changing dimension 3 are differs with only one difference. Here the slowly changing dimension 2, it is going to preserve all the history of it. I mean to say, like if you take an example of any particular the company name called 1111, so from the past like 8 years or 10 years, the company might have changed from shipper to customer, customer to shipper, shipper to customer, something like that. So it will capture all the history whenever the customer has changed for every 2-3 hours, 2-3 years, or maybe after 1 year, or maybe after few months. If the company has changed its relationship, so in that case it is going to identify all the required the changes, all the history of that particular company will be captured in slowly changing dimension 2. But whereas in slowly changing dimension 3, it is going to capture only the partial history of that particular company. So let us take an example that from the past 10 years the customer has changed only the 5 times actually. So the slowly changing dimension 2 is going to capture all the 5 changes, and it is going to show you all the 5 different records in the target system, all the operators and insert records in the target system. But if you take a slowly changing dimension 3, so what exactly it is going to do is it is going to preserve only the last but one. So let us assume that customer has changed, customer has the 5 histories before the current. It is going to preserve the last history, that's it. So only one history plus the current. So that is the basic difference between the slowly changing dimension 3 and the slowly changing dimension 2. So in order to implement the slowly changing dimension 3, so it is going to the key generation transformation is going to play a vital role with the help of a column called SID. So with the help of this the SID, we can implement the even slowly changing dimension 3 in our SAP BODS. So having said that, so now we will try to first execute, and we will again come back to the features of the table comparison. What are the features of the table comparison that we are interested in, and what these features will explain us. We will take up all these things. So what is a comparison method, which comparison measure has to be when, so row by row select and cached comparison table and sorted input table, when exactly these comparison methods have to be used. So all these things that we will try to understand with the implementation of the slowly changing dimension. So now we have used table comparison in order to raise the required operation codes, or required operation codes will be flagged by the table comparison. Now we will simply drag and drop the history preserving of the table comparison, like we are using 2 map operations at a time. So that is the comparison that you can make it history preserving versus the map operation. So once these data columns are populated, so these history preserving transformation is going to populate the required valid from and valid to. So initially whatever the records are coming from as an insert into our the target table, so those doesn't have any data date timestamp. So that's the reason why we are populating the sysdate. So So whatever the records that we are populating with update, then so though for those updated records, the valid from will be taken care and valid to will be taken care by the history preserving transformation, and we don't have to worry at all. And if it is comes to the valid to date, whether you want to give any default value or else if you want to give your own value, it all depends upon what is the value that you would like to give. You can change the default value. Instead of 9000, you can also give 99999, 4 nines also we can give it. It all depends upon how exactly your customer wants to see. If you take an example of an SAP BW or SAP landscape, so normally the date will be something like 99999, 4 nines will be there. If you want to make use of the same notation, something like that, so definitely you can go for the 9999.12.31. Also you can do that. And so how exactly you want to denote, or if you want to know notation to follow for the old record would be whether you want to use a valid from date of the new record, or else if you want to one day after the valid to you want to make it as a new record, or how exactly the things you want to make it up. It all depends upon the requirement. So let us do a first load. Then we will come back here to see the more options here and there. We can play around with that and we can proceed further on. And so whenever we are talking about the current flag within the history preserving or transformation will rise simply a value actually. So it is going to reset value 1 or 0. If it is if it is becoming a old record, it will be a 0. If it is an active record, then it is 1. So that's the reason why initially I am going to set a value to 1. So once it becomes a old record, I will going to reset to 0. So this is what actually happens. And in order to have a comparison, so what is the comparison field that you want to have? I want to have a relationship as the comparison field. And whereas in the table comparison, what I have did a relationship, even here also the same. So it all depends upon, so what exactly you want to do. You want to do a relationship, or you want to do the contact name changes, you want to capture it, and all and everything. It all depends upon how you want to analyze your data in the source system. So what is the main the point of implementing the slowly changing dimension too. So depends upon that. Actually you can decide upon what are all the fields that you need to select and what we need to have and everything in the target system. So now having said that, so we have an ff underscore scd2 underscore v1, we have a query transformation, so table comparison and history preserving. Now so we are only left with the key generation transformation. So simply drag and drop the key generation transformation, and with the key generation transformation, so we have a table name that the table name, what is the table name that we are referring to here? So we have something called the table name would be company name underscore data. So in this particular company name, so what is SID is a column name where it increments every one. Okay, that is what actually happens here. So now, so we have almost at the end of the flow of the slowly changing dimension 2 here. So first we have a file format, query transformation to populate the system date for very first time, table comparison in order to rise a flags, and history preserving and key generation. That is what actually happens. After that I am going to place a target table into which I want to load the records. So now, so I have something called as SQL Server into a table that is called as the company data underscore scd. Simply drag and drop and make it as a target. That's it. So now we have completed the basic the flow of the slowly changing dimension 2. So now simply execute and see for very first time, because we have some records in the source system but currently we don't have any records in the target system. So now we will try to understand how or in what way actually the things will move with this particular initial load. So let us try to understand the output of this particular the table. So now where exactly we got wrong actually. So it says that there is a connection problem, something like that. So what I will do is I will try to, now we did an initial load into the target system. Now we will see some 6 records got loaded into the target system. So now, so we will try to go to the job and we will try to identify the source records, and beside to that I will also display the target records in the target how exactly. So everything has populated here. So if you clearly observe here, so we have a company ID 1111, the valid from, because it has populated the today's date 2014-09-23, and so we have a valid to would be 9012-31. So that is actually happens valid from and the valid to. So as a the initial record date and the target of that particular record, valid from and valid to. So because we did an initial load and currently there are no changes to the existing record, so that's the reason why. So everything we have is valid from and the valid to as a standard population or populated by the data services, the history preserving and the query transformation and all and everything. So having this particular knowledge, now we will try to go to the source file and try to change some records. For company ID 1111, so it is changed from supplier to customer. So that's the reason why I'm going to change it to customer to supplier to customer, and I will also make it one supplier to one customer to supplier. So that is what actually the change that I would like to make it. Save this particular Excel sheet, and then just try to identify and just try to perform the load once again and try to identify how the things will go on. So 3589 is the port number, job the port number on which job server is running here. So here we see some error message. Okay, so here it says that there is a running memory low. Okay, so normally this particular error will comes up whenever we have a low virtual memory on your source system on your BODS server, job server, then only this type of issues will come across. So that's the reason why we have to always make sure that we have a proper the memory is there on our job server, on our BODS server, where exactly the BODS got installed actually. So I have ran the job, and job is successful now the second time. So whenever we have loaded, it says that history preserving is captured too, and the key generation has the 4 records. It has to take care of it, and we have table comparison as compared with 6 records in the source. So for coming from the source actually. So finally we can say that 2 records got populated with the help of a history preserving transformation, because these 2 records are 2 new inserted records, because I'm changing an existing records. So I'm updating actually the records in the source. So if I'm updating the records in the source, so obviously whatever the records are getting updated, those records needs to be inserted into the target system. So that is what actually the history preserving will work for it. So that's the reason why whatever we have whatever we have updated in the source system, those records will become the target records. So that's the reason why. So what exactly we have to do? So we have to identify the table comparisons functionality here. The table comparison will do an update, convert into an insert. So that is what actually happens here as a preliminary. If we observe carefully, so till what time? So this is because in our scenario we don't have any date or timestamp in the source system in order to identify or clearly observe. So what we can observe is we can observe with the help of a timestamp here. So whenever I have loaded these records very first time, so we have a 2014 09 23 we have with the timestamp called 7:33:24 something like that with the timestamp even. But that is the first time actually. So but whenever this particular record is changed from supplier to customer, so what exactly happening here? So 7:33:24:74 will become or will change from supplier to customer at 7:39. So after you can say that the 6 minutes actually the record is changed from supplier to customer. So that's the reason why. So it has changed from 7:33 to 7:39. So the value 2, the end of this particular record, will become the start of this particular record. So of where actually the customer is, where exactly the company has changed its nature of working as a customer. So that's the reason why if you see here 2014-09-23 will become the starting of the record where it is changed from supplier to customer. So that is what actually happens here. And the end of, and because this particular record is active here, so that's the reason why. So you can say that 9000.12.31 is a value 2. Actually it is trying to observe here. So now, so this got a value called 1. If you remember, so earlier, so we have given the value 1 and the reset value is 0 in the history preserving transformation. So what does that mean? So initially, whenever we did an initial load, that becomes 1. That is an 1. All the current flag will be populated with 1, not 0. But whenever we did a second load, so whatever the updates is going on, so where it is going to change from 1 to 0. So that is what actually it is happening here. So initially it is having a flag 1, but whenever we have executed this particular job for second time, so what exactly happens here? It is going to populate, it is going to reset 1 to 0, and again, so if we are going to do a third load, actually what happens is it is going to convert 1 to 0, so something like that. So it is all depends upon what exactly you are trying to do and all and everything. So this is how actually the history preserving will work out. So if you observe carefully, so what or maybe the change in the records, so that can be the company IDs repeating, or whatever it is, the customer current flag is repeating, but SID is not repeating. So it is generating a continuous records and something like that. So that's the reason why the SIDs plays a major role, vital role, in order to remove the duplicacy and also in order to implement this type of records. So for very first time, if I have loaded, then if I have 6 records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then it is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 8, whatever it is. But whenever we are going to use the history preserving in the second load, so we have increased 2 records because I have updated an existing 2 records. So that's the reason why it has increased from 6 to 7 and 8. So this is how actually we are going to implement the slowly changing dimension 2 with query transformation, table comparison, history preserving, and key generation. The slowly changing dimension 2, as I mentioned previously, so it is going to preserve the history along with the current, along with the change data capture also will be happening here. At the end of this particular session, I hope you got the importance of an SAP BODS, the features of an SAP BODS, what are all the different strong points of an SAP BODS, and each and every individual who are in a ABAP, who are in SAP BW, who are in a non-SAP ETL background, so they can be easily adopt this particular SAP BODS course in their careers. Thank you for attending the session. Thank you.